This is Democracy Watch. Marc, we have a lot of doom and gloom in politics right now, but we have some rare good news today. Your firm just today, breaking, won a huge lawsuit in a pivotal swing state. Walk us through what just happened.
Yeah, this is a major, major victory for the voters of Wisconsin and will make an enormous difference in ballots counting, mail-in ballots counting in this November's election. So in Wisconsin, in order to vote by mail, in order to vote absentee, you fill out your ballot, you put it in an envelope, you fill out the back of the envelope, and then you need a witness to also sign and fill out their information on the back of the envelope. We could have a whole conversation of why the hell you need a witness, but you need a witness. It turns out that after the 2020 election, there was a study, and 7% of all of the ballots that are cast by mail had some kind of omission or deficiency in the witness certification. And you could see why, because if you, let's say your spouse or your parent or child live with you, when you fill out your certification as the witness, like you're very likely not going to fill in the full address again because they've just filled it in, or you might abbreviate the state, or you might abbreviate the town, or you might leave off the zip code, right? And so those ballots, the Republicans have been attacking in court. They've been saying that those ballots shouldn't count because the witness certificate was not completely filled out. And again, we're talking about 7% of the ballots. We're talking about tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of votes at stake. And so my law firm, on behalf of a student group called RISE, brought a lawsuit to say that, look, as long as the election official can figure out where you live, right? As long as you filled out enough address information that they can fill out your location, the ballot should not be thrown out and it should count. And today, the Court of Appeals in Wisconsin agreed with that, and that is going to lead to the counting of thousands and thousands and thousands of ballots that, if the Republican legislature had its way, would be tossed in the garbage.
Marc, am I wrong to think that if we're looking at a 7% rejection rate of absentee ballots in a state that is effectively 50-50, does that not unto itself have the ability to swing the election one way or the other? And I say one way or the other, but let's be real. I mean, it's disproportionately Democrats who vote by using mail ballots.
Yeah, so there's been some public data analysis on this. It's about 2/3 of the ballots that fall into this category that would be rejected are from young voters or communities of color. So it's not quite scored partisan, but you can probably guess, right. What the partisan effect of it is. And yeah, this is enough to frankly affect the outcome of the election. If this had been the rule in 2020, Wisconsin very well might have gone the other way, which is the reason why, by the way, the Republican legislature studied this question after 2020 and came up with that 7% number. And it's the reason why Republicans then brought litigation and have been so focused on trying to get these ballots thrown out, and why this case is such a big case for voting rights and democracy in Wisconsin. And when you combine it with the victory we had last week for ballot drop boxes being reinstated in Wisconsin, those two decisions together, I think, are very likely outcome determinative in a very close election in Wisconsin in 2024.
So we have two cases that your firm litigated and won, and they are outcome determinative cases, all of which underscores the importance of the work that you and your team are doing right now. So for folks watching right now, I mean, that kind of speaks to itself. If you want to support the work that Marc and his team are doing, a very small step that we can all take to support them is to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet Marc founded to focus on everything voting in elections, and is also an amazing resource other than the fact that you are supporting great people who are doing great work. So I'll put the link to that right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Marc, does an incomplete address, for example, have any bearing on the legitimacy or validity of a ballot or a voter? Like, is there any evidence to suggest that an incomplete address on a ballot equates to a fraudulent vote, which of course is going to be the talking point for these Republicans?
No, not at all. I mean, of course it doesn't. But again, remember, we're talking only about incomplete addresses where the clerk knows what the address is, right? So this is not incomplete addresses even where, you can't figure out where the person lives. Right. We're talking about incomplete addresses in that someone says, 11 Ocean, Deal, New Jersey. Right. And they don't say Boulevard or Avenue, but the clerk in Monmouth County knows exactly what it is. Right. Or in Los Angeles, they put LA. rather
Right.
than Los Angeles, right?
Which, by the way, is what I do. So
right. And the person, the clerk in Los Angeles knows that LA stands for Los Angeles, right? So these are not incomplete in the sense of making it impossible for the clerk to know. These are incomplete in that the Republicans are nitpicking addresses that the clerks do know, but they don't want them to count.
Right. They're just basically looking to throw them out on a technicality that has no bearing whatsoever on the validity or legitimacy of that actual vote. The Republicans may certainly appeal this ruling, but they would be appealing it to a majority liberal court. So are they going to appeal anyway, knowing that it's a lost cause and that it'll cost them more money and resources to do so? Or are they just going to take the L on this one?
So this is the psychological question that you and I talk a lot about across a range of cases, which is that a smart legal decision would be you take the L and you move on, right? Because there is virtually no chance that the Republican legislature is going to get the majority liberal Wisconsin Supreme Court to reverse this, and certainly to reverse it in time for November, right? So let's just start with reality. But then there's always this alternate reality that Republicans operate in which they want to be aggrieved. Right? They thrive off of being aggrieved. They thrive off of being the victims. And so do they appeal just so that they can say, woe is us, once again, we have been wronged by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. People think that Donald Trump is a strong man. He is a whiny little man. He whines constantly, and he leaves a party of whiners and a movement of whiners. And the whiniest of them all are the lawyers that litigate. They are constantly saying, oh, we didn't get a fair this and we didn't get a fair that. The fact is they have terrible legal arguments, and that is why they lose.
Perfectly put. And I've made this point a number of times as well. I mean, this is the self-proclaimed party of alphas. You have never seen a party more steeped in victimhood than the Republican Party, led by the biggest victim of them all, who is Donald Trump. Marc, can you tell me more about the history of witness certificates generally? I mean, this is the point that you were bringing up at the top. What's the purpose of these certificates? Would you consider them a form of voter suppression?
Yeah, so requiring witnesses is a form of voter suppression. It is. Some states have them because they were very, very common decades ago, when before you had modern forms of communication, before you had modern ways for clerks, for example, to look up addresses, before you even had the telephone book, no less Google Maps, right? The idea was it was a way to verify that this person who said they were a voter was a voter. It's before the days of even voter files, where you had computerized records of voters. So, there may have been a reason for these in the 1800s and the early 1900s, but now they are just a voter suppression tool, and there is no reason why any state should have them. And we are litigating cases against them in states like Minnesota. There's no reason, frankly, why the Minnesota legislature should not repeal their requirement. And we are going to litigate against them there. And we've litigated against them with some success elsewhere. Some places we win, some places we don't. I believe that they violate federal law. I believe that in presidential elections, they violate the Federal Voting Rights Act because they are a form of vouching, right? We all agree that it would be illegal to require you to bring someone to the polls to vouch for you as a upstanding citizen and an eligible voter. Well, that's what these are. These are just vouching requirements for absentee ballots, and they should be abolished. And it should be on every Democratic legislature's agenda, if you're in a state that has them, to do away with them.
Right. I mean, it shouldn't. Your right to vote should not be dependent on your ability to find a stranger willing to sign your ballot. I mean, on its face, it seems blatantly unconstitutional.
Yeah, and it's not doing any work. In today's day and age, what is it really doing? What is that witness doing that frankly Google Maps couldn't do, or any number of sites that you can look up someone's address?
Let's finish off with this. Is the Republican Party's plan now simply to attack every facet of mail ballots, knowing that, again, as I mentioned before, it is disproportionately Democrats who employ them?
Yeah, the Republican Party wants to make it harder to vote and easier to cheat. And there is no place in the voting process that they want to make it harder to vote than vote by mail. Donald Trump told a big lie in 2020 to his supporters that they should not vote by mail, and they didn't. And that may have cost them the election in 2020. They told the same lie to their voters in 2022. Don't trust vote by mail is full of fraud is a lie, but that's the lie they told. And their voters didn't. And it may have cost some of their candidates their elections in 2022. In 2024, you see some tepid efforts by some Republicans to try to detoxify voting by mail, but those are half-hearted. Because what I can tell you is don't listen to what Republicans say in their press releases. Listen to what their lawyers are telling courts. And in courthouses after courthouse around this country, Republican lawyers are attacking voting by mail in every possible way they can. And that is because they know that Donald Trump's big lie to their supporters is not going to be undone. Donald Trump has told their voters not to vote by mail. They're not going to vote by mail. And they know that if they target vote by mail, they will disproportionately impact not just Democrats, but certain kinds of Democrats. They will disproportionately impact the young, and they will disproportionately impact minority voters. And that is what they are up to.
All of which, again, as I mentioned before, underscores the importance of the work that you and your team are doing by fighting back against these Republican efforts in the courts. So for those watching, again, to support the invaluable work that Marc and his team are doing, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.